Greetings. My name is Manvi Mehta, and I'm a student of semester 9, section C. My roll number is 93. This is a presentation of the Constitution of Lucidiya. Lucidiya is a fictional country, and to give a brief background about Lucidiya, well, Lucidiya literally means something. It actually stems from the word lucid, which actually means something that is clearly expressed or is easy to understand. Lucidia's motto, the three mottos of Lucidia, which will be discussed forward, actually stem from this word, and that's why the name Lucidia. So I'll be presenting a bit about the constitution of Lucidia, but to give a brief background about how Lucidia looks like. It is an island nation. It is almost twice the size of that of Sri Lanka, and the present Sri Lanka. And the population of Lucidia is approximately 15 million. Lucidia gained its independence around 1940, and this is the 8th edition of Lucidia's constitution. Now, more about this was the geographical aspect, more about and also the historical aspect. Now, more about the economic aspect. Lucidia's economy primarily bases itself on tourism and secondly on agriculture. The constitution is primarily the constitution of Lucidia is primarily inspired from Australia, Switzerland, Japan, and India. But at the most, it is also pretty much inventive in nature. And when I say inventive, those are the points that actually include Lucidia's unique points. So the motto of Lucidia, as discussed before, is clarity and visionary. It aims to be transparent, and thirdly, it rather focuses on being accountable, and there must be freedom of speech. Now, these characteristics are more so seen in the nation of Switzerland because of its role of referendum and mandatory and optional referendums of the country itself. Now, moving on, this is the territorial and governmental structure as discussed before. So the Constitution's chapter 1 and 2 essentially deal with territory and citizenship, articles relating to territory and citizenship, whereas chapter 4, 5, and 6 essentially deal with the government and state instrumentalities. So it essentially deals with judiciary, legislature, and executive. This is broadly the index of the Constitution. There are total 8 chapters and there are 28 articles. Moving on, starting with the first chapter, firstly, the title and composition, democratic federal union of factions. Now, I would just like to clarify that factions here are similar to states in most nations. So there's a whole country, then there are smaller parts that are states. Here, these are called factions. Just like in Switzerland, there are cantons. And furthermore, the even smaller administrative units within a state are generally called districts in other nations sometimes. But here, these are called figments. So in any case, if there is a need to add or alter any territory, the Article 2 must be referred for the same. Then comes Chapter 2. It essentially talks about the citizenship and composition. Again, provided that no person is eligible for any other simultaneous citizenship. So basically, Lucidia does not recognize a dual citizenship. It's Article 4, which is called a factional citizen, which is the state identity. So every person either born in Lucidia in a particular faction shall be deemed as its citizen. Let's say one of the factions is called Ring. So if I'm born in Ring, then I'll be a citizen of Ring by birth. So, and then this is point A. The point B says that, so basically, if a person has been residing as on the date of independence, will be considered as basically a citizen of that faction, whether or not they have been born in that faction or not. Then thirdly, the factional government can place migration restrictions on other factional citizens. This is only to ensure that a particular state is not crowded too much at a particular given point of time. And sometimes if there is some kind of internal disturbance or if a state is going through some security issues, then they can actually restrict the movement of people coming from other states. So here, essentially, it has been stated that how will be the composition of any faction, how it should essentially be. This has been highly inspired from the Maintenance of Religious Harmony Act in Singapore. Diversity. Here we are trying to promote secularism and also freedom of religion to practice and preach religion, but also to ensure that there is broadly unity among people and there's no divide because of religion. So there should be no separation of society on the basis of these 3 to 4 categories or points. Then the second point is to distribution of citizens in every 1,000 miles. The distribution of citizens should be in the following proportion. Should be in a proportion of their religious identity. So basically, for example, since we talked about Ring, I'll give an example that, as I stated in the illustration, there are 50% Christians, 30% Hindus, 20% Muslims, and 10% of other religious groups. So now, if in that state, this is the proportion, then for every 1,000 square miles, the people residing should be in this proportion. Then Chapter 3 essentially deals with the fundamental rights, that is Article 6 to 12, wherein most of the fundamental rights are basic and they are pretty much similar to other nations and mostly are inspired from India. Then coming to the legislature. So firstly, the central body, the central government or you can say the parliament, is called the mirror. Since it's unicameral, so mirror is the only house. There's no upper house, lower house, only mirror. Parties, which shall all be directly accountable to now there's a committee. The committee is called Parliamentary Review Committee. Now, the only function of PRC is to ensure that the bill does not impinge on any constitutional rights or any other law for that matter. So, law. However, the PRC is any other opinion relating to policy matters in that particular bill, like how should a provision look like. That is not the task of PRC. So it is not in their domain, and the law will be reviewed by PRC before it being assented, so that there is one less step and one more precautionary measure. Then this talks about the election of the mirror. All the members of the mirror shall be directly elected by the citizens. Again, the president and prime minister shall at least be a bachelor's degree holder. So there is a minimum educational qualification for them. Then again, this talks about Article 15 talks about the structure and power of the factional government. So just like the mirror, there is a factional assembly, the state assembly, and just like the PRC, there is a factional review committee. The only difference being that there were 5 specialists there. Here there will be 3 other specialists. Then this the next chapter talks about the executive. So the unique point here is that the Auditor General of Lucidiya must also be a part of the Executive Council. Then the civil servants is pretty much inspired by the Indian structure. Moving on to the judiciary, there will be 2 levels of courts. Now the composition of courts is it will all comprise of qualified judges in such a way that in each factional court, proportionately there should be 1 judge per 1,000 people deciding in that particular faction. Article 22 essentially talks about the appointment of judges. So the Lucidian Bar Commission shall be the body which sets the procedure, conducts exams, or any other eligibility criteria that should be there for the appointment of judges. But broadly, there will be exams. There will be 2 examinations, like 2 types of examinations. The entry-level examination is for candidates who are new candidates and want to become, who want to enter the judiciary. The advanced level examination is for already existing judges who are practicing judges or who are senior advocates having at least 10 years of experience. They are eligible to sit for the advanced level exam. They cannot be directly appointed as judges or be promoted. Then chapter 7 essentially talks about the like who the AGL is, the Auditor General of Lucidiya, has talked about before. He's also part of the executive. And in the executive, how will the AGL be elected? So firstly, the eligibility criteria is that the AGL should be a finance officer. Now there are 2 riders. One, that at least 50% of the total and 20% of those members who are not in the ruling party. If this exists, only then can that particular AGL be appointed. Now these are the following are the taxation slabs in Article 26, and they are pretty much similar to other nations as well. Well, this is the amendment procedure. Now in the amendment procedure, the primary, I would say, the thing that is different is the involvement of PRC. The parliament can add provisions to the fundamental rights, but firstly, the parliament cannot amend in a way, or the mirror cannot amend in a way such that it abrogates the basic structure of the constitution, which essentially involves the fundamental rights, and other provisions such as the election of or how the members of the parliament will be elected, etc. Secondly, if the parliament thinks that there is a need to add certain provisions to the fundamental rights, then it can do so on the advisory or direction of the Supreme Court. One, and with the special majority of the PRC in lieu of an ever-evolving society. Basically, if the society is changing, there will be some additions in the fundamental rights or in the constitution as a whole. So this provision has been added for the same. Now, Article 28 is a unique procedure, which is also again inspired a bit from Switzerland. It is called mandatory polling or referendum. Now, this mandatory referendum will involve all the citizens. And so basically, in what type of things that has been mentioned in A, like for what things a mandatory referendum is needed. And in B, it says when will it be assented to in order to implement the proposed amendment. So basically, the number of people that are voting, out of them, at least 70% should assent to such a referendum. And the referendum needs to be conducted when the amendment is proposed by the mirror or by the factional assembly. So this is essentially about the Constitution of Lucidiya. I hope I was able to explain it properly. Thank you so much.